In this video, we're going to talk about how we measure angles, namely what units we use to measure angles, and how we can convert back and forth between those units. So when we're talking about measuring angles, we typically use these two different measures, degrees and radians. So 1 degree is just 1/360th of a circle. So there are 360 degrees in a full rotation or in a circle. Radians are the relationship between the radius and the circumference of a circle, and it turns out that there are 2 pi radii around the circumference of a circle. So that means that there are 2 pi radians in a full rotation or in a full circle. And what that means is that we then have this equivalence. 360 degrees is equal to 2 pi. And we can actually use this to give us a conversion ratio to help us convert between degrees and radians. We can actually simplify this a little bit. If we want to just express this in terms of pi, we can divide both sides by 2, and we get that pi is equal to 180 degrees. And this is going to be where we get our conversion ratio. So if we're given an angle measure in degrees and we want to convert it to radians, we just take whatever degree measure we're given and we multiply by the conversion ratio of pi divided by 180 degrees. So let's say, for example, we're given a measure of 30 degrees and we want to convert it into radians. So we can take its measure, multiply by pi divided by 180 degrees, and then just simplify. Now, if you recall back to when we were in science, right, if you had units in the top and in the bottom, we can kind of treat them like they're canceling and we're converting units. So the same idea is happening here. So 30 goes into 186 times. So we end up with pi over 6 radians. So 30 degrees is equivalent to pi over 6 radians. And then if you're given an angle that's measured in radians and you want to convert it to degrees, we can just do the reciprocal. We multiply by the reciprocal of our conversion ratio. So if we're given our pi over 6 radians and we want to convert it into degrees, we can multiply by 180 degrees over pi. Now, often the pi will cancel, right? The pi's will cancel. However, there are times when our radian measure is not given in terms of pi, so we won't have anything to cancel. So these will cancel. 6 goes into 180 30 times, and we're left with 30 degrees. So we have pi over 6 radians is equal to 30 degrees, which we already knew from this over here. So let's look at a few more examples. In this example, we want to convert 150 degrees into radians, and we want to express our answer in terms of pi. Basically what this is saying is don't multiply your new result out. So if I have 150 degrees, and I want to convert it into radians, that means that I'm going to have to multiply by pi divided by 180 degrees. So when we do this, we end up with 150 pi over 180, but we can do some reducing here. So first we know that both of these are divisible by 10, so we end up with 15 pi over 18. And I think we can do some further reducing because both of these, I believe, are divisible by 3. So if I divide 15 by 3, I get 5, so 5 pi. And then 8 divided by 3 is 6, so I end up with 5 pi over 6. So 150 degrees is equal to 5 pi over 6 radians. Now this conversion also works for negative angles. So in this case we have the radian measure negative 3 pi over 4, and we want to turn it into degrees. So to turn it into degrees, that tells me we're going to multiply by 180 degrees divided by pi. So when we do this, the pi cancels, and we end up with negative 3 times 180 over 4. But I want to do a little bit of reducing so that I don't have to do this large multiplication. 4 is going to go into 180 evenly. I think it goes in 45 times because 180 divided by 2 is 90. 90 divided by 2 is 45. So yeah, it goes in 45 times. So now we have negative 3 times 45. So negative 3 times 45, that's going to give us 135. Negative 135 degrees. So negative 3 pi over 4 is equal to negative 135 degrees.